Going back to your statement about the mountain communities, yeah, I see that we have a lot of population that is enjoys the mountains, but this is usually the population that is not working anymore, that is retiring, and with that, it seems a little bit that these communities, kind of like in the Midwest, kind of dying out. As example, the local school district had a couple of years, 3, 4 years ago, in their 3 campuses an enrollment of about 1,500 kids. Now they are down to 700. And even 3, 4 years ago they had homeschooling as well. So do we not risk kind of creating ghost towns throughout Kern County if we do not tie all these, isolated communities into the development for Kern County?
You do risk that. It's a little bit, it's analogous to what we call bedroom communities, or residential communities without any commercial activity. Those cities like that don't survive very long because they need to have the tax base, they need the industrial, the commercial, the retail, they need all those things, the professionals in those cities. Otherwise you end up with a very low tax base. It's a known fact among planners and among municipal city managers that residential developments don't pay their way. The property tax, the way we have structured the tax system and the funding system for government, residential communities don't generate enough money for the services they require. So that's probably true also with regard to they don't generate enough, in some cases, enough need for certain types of retail or certain types of services to move there because there's not enough business there. I don't know what you do about that. That's a planning issue, and that's a private sector issue, and part of the reason you live in the mountains is to get away from it all, and then when you're away from it all, you want some of the good stuff to come to the mountains. And I think you're going to see that slowly, but I think you're going to have to see the population base get larger. And people may not like that aspect, because when you get more people, you get more problems.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but personally I believe that people should participate, and with that also not only getting the good in the mountains and all the without participating in the economic development. If you're a community, you should participate in the economic development.
But I think you're asking, what can the county do about that? What can government do about that? And I'm going to give you a basic answer, and this may not do, I can tell you right off the bat, this might not be successful. We can do things like improve the parks. We recently, or a few years ago, the county put in the streetscape downtown. That's what I call trying to, if you improve the parks, if you improve the amenities in the city, in the area, maybe somebody with some money who wants to invest will come in and do something there when they see some good things happening. Those are the types of things that I think government can do. We can make it set sort of the landscape for what people can expect, and invite development and invite business to come in and invest in those areas. But it takes a while, and it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes years and years. There are things that are happening now that I saw that I thought were pipe dreams 20 years ago. For example, Bakersfield just got a Nordstrom's rack.
A what? Yeah.
Nordstrom's rack. That was something that people have wanted for as long as I can remember. That is one store that people in Bakersfield thought they deserved, they wanted. We had the demographics, we had the population, but we had everything we needed, but they would not come here. Some way, shape, or form. And I can tell you, government didn't get them to come here. Government's hand in that was the zoning of the property, where it's built, those types of things. We created the opportunity, but the private sector brought that. The same thing has to happen here. It'll be on a much smaller scale. The same principles apply.
But should government not be more proactive? Because if things fail to come together, or if population fail and need welfare, need drug counseling and so on, it's in the end the public sector that has to respond and deal with all the recovery issue. So would it not make more sense for a modern government to be proactive and make sure that they invest in positive things before they have to pay for bad things?
What I'm talking about, I think, is investing in those positive things. But what when we say being more proactive, I don't know what that means. Does that mean we actually subsidize some type of a business? If it does, now we're starting to pick winners and losers in the marketplace. And I don't think it's government's place to do that.
I would fully agree. On the other hand, I think it's also kind of, I know it's a very complicated process, right. There's no question about that, but what you want, especially when I see how rich Kern County is in, oil, agriculture and so on, should it not be fair to, especially the younger generation, that even those that live in socio-economically a little bit down communities have the same chance by, having transportation, having libraries, having what you referred to a couple of minutes ago, adult learning centers, or, employee resource center, so that they can, thrive and become, active citizens in their community, with that also increase the level of their communities.
Should they have it?
Yeah.
Sure. But I think it exists. It seems like a lot of the questions you've got center around someone being able to get from point A to point B. I live here, the services are here, or the job opportunities are here. How do I get back and forth? Maybe that's a place for public transportation, but as you said early on, Kern County is huge. It's bigger than some states, and it's 8,500 something square miles. It's hard to satisfy the need for public transportation in a community that is that large. We do some of it, but it's difficult to touch every single place adequately, probably. It's just hard to do.
Okay, I understand that. Let's go back a little bit to the Kern County administration. I understand that Kern County administration is now at the point where you want to have a more lenient, a more efficient administration with the new public works department used as an example. What are the next steps? And also you mentioned, or it was mentioned in one paper, that there is a department, or the idea of having a department of arts and culture. Can you a little bit elaborate?
Well, that was in our effort to consolidate to save some money. Another possible combination of departments might be, for example, libraries, parks, and the museum. You can look at all the departments we have and you can say, well, if I was to group these in certain ways where they sort of make sense, they would go together. There's a thought that those three might go together. The economies of scale that we would get, we might not need 3 business managers, one for each department. We might only need 1 or 2. We have to have, by state law, a county librarian. There's the potential that the library services might be privatized. There's a potential that the parks maintenance, well, we've already started on privatizing some of the park maintenance, and that was done up in the Lost Hills area. It started before I ever got on the board. The cost to do that, to provide that service, was literally 20% of what it was costing before. Not a 20% savings, 20% of what it used to cost before, so an 80% savings. So there's a huge savings to do that, and we're not talking about laying people off. We're talking about, as people move through their career and retire, we would just attrition out those jobs and replace them with a private contractor to do the work. So yes, there's that thought with.
May I go there for a moment? certainly can save some money, but there are probably two requirements that are very important as far as public services is concerned. A, how can you ensure that there is no cut in services, whatever the privatized service is, and B, also, I think for many services, it is important to realize it is a service by the public, for the public, so that the public control is maintained, so that, let's say, the libraries, just as an example, would be privatized, that in the end, elected officials and the public still has control about policy decisions and so on.
Absolutely. When I say privatization, what I mean is the county, in its simplest terms, would contract with a private company to provide a service. In that contract is the scope of what that company has to do. Pick libraries for a second. How many hours are they going to provide at each individual library? Can we provide more hours? Can we provide the same number of hours for less money? Can we get more hours for the same money? That's a policy decision the Board of Supervisors has to make. What that contract says is what that contractor has to provide. And if they don't, then we find someone else to do the job.
We have a short stop here.